The other day I took the car for a long drive and the car overheated. It overheated pretty bad. And I was able to get it home driving 45, 50 miles an hour. Just the airflow over the engine kept it cool enough for me to get it home. But when I did get home and just parked it and let it idle, it stalled out on me. And when I was driving, if I had to come to a stop and then accelerate back up to speed, it didn't want to go. It hesitated and was very sluggish. And I got home and I figured out mostly what this video was about, what I went through to fix the cooling fan. I thought what I had was a cooling fan issue, and I made a video that goes through what I did to get my cooling fan working again, and it does work now. It works really well. But one of the things I was worried about was why it overheated in the first place. I thought about all the obvious things: a bad radiator, or maybe a bad thermostat. But all that was okay. What I did is I started running some tests, and I ran a vacuum test on it. I purchased this from Harbor Freight a long time ago, and I've run tests. I've used this vacuum meter before to test the vacuum of the engine, and my vacuum has always been at the 22 inch, about 20 inches, somewhere around in there, between 17 and 22. It's always been real steady, but I noticed when I hooked this up, and if you want to do this, I just hooked it up to the brake line. I disconnected the brake booster, and I just hooked this hose up to the brake line. But I noticed when I did it this time, it was around 15, 16 inches, and it stayed there pretty steady. And even when I revved the engine up, it should drop down and then come back up to where it was. It didn't. It just stayed down. So that was one of my first indications that something's not right in the engine. And I was thinking maybe some kind of a clog in the catalytic converter. So I ran another test, and I had one of these. You can buy these at Harbor Freight too. Just a simple temperature gauge, holding point. And when I did it, I noticed that the inlet side of my catalytic converter was at about 350 to 370 degrees. Should be a lot hotter on the outlet side of the catalytic converter. It should have been, on these old cars like this, it should have been 450 to 470, 100 degrees hotter. And I was getting a cooler reading on the exhaust side of my catalytic converter. I was getting a reading of about 270, 250, 270, somewhere around in there. So I have not taken the catalytic converter off yet, but I'm just going to park the car and take the exhaust system off, and I'll look at the catalytic converter, and I'll make another video and show the catalytic converter if that's what it is. But also notice on the exhaust, when I put my hand in front of the tips, I'm not getting a lot of flow back there. One of the problems is I won't make any bones about it. I work on the car a lot, and it idles a lot, and it doesn't really. I don't get out on the open highway in the winter at all. I will work on it and let it idle a lot, which is that's not good for these old cars. But anyway, I just thought I'd run all this by if you're having stalling and overheating, hesitation on when you accelerate, doesn't want to get up and go. You might want to look into get one of these vacuum gauges, maybe get a temperature gauge and run a couple of tests on the car to see what you got. see where things are at. I've spent the last 2 days trying to figure out why my cooling fan stopped working on this car. So I'm going to make a video as best I can to try to go through what I went through to fix this system, and I hope it helps somebody. You know, I'm not going to take it all apart again because, like I say, I spent 2 days on this. I finally got it all back together, and it actually works. Everything's working great now. But I believe my problem ended up being this cooling fan relay, which is right up underneath the master cylinder, on the brake master cylinder. I believe I rewired this entire relay. I believe one of the wires over to the fuse panel frayed out and was shorting out. And it took me a while to find that relay, but to find that wiring faux-pas. But yeah, the thing about the 1984 Corvette, it's a standalone cooling fan system. It doesn't use anything with the electronic control module. It doesn't use anything else on the car, with the exception of the battery. But you know, I'll do the best I can to try to explain some things to you and maybe help somebody else out. But in order to do this, you need a multimeter. You know, any multimeter that'll do DC volts, and particularly continuity would be very helpful. And if you have the electrical troubleshooting shop manual, that would be good too, because inside of the shop manual, inside of this electrical troubleshooting manual, it actually has the cooling fan wiring diagram, and it also gives you some tips on troubleshooting the system. And I don't think this is very much. I think you can get them on eBay for $10 probably, $5 or $10. But anyway, what happens on this? Well, briefly, what happens on the cooling fan is it has a relay here. It has 12 volts of power supplied to it from the battery. It has, I'm going to walk over here on the passenger side, a cooling fan switch that, I don't know if you can see it down in there or not. It's between, it's right there. It's between cylinder 7 and 8. It's just got a single wire that goes to it, and when that cooling fan switch reaches 238 degrees, when it closes, which grounds the system out, which sends it over to the relay. The relay closes, and power is supplied to the cooling fan. But if you look at this cooling fan relay, it has 4 wires that come out of it. One is a red wire. That red wire, you can disconnect the connector, just pull it out, and you'll see a red wire. That red wire goes directly to the battery, positive side of the battery, and it's a fusible link in there. This happened to me once before. I took the fusible link out and I put a 3 amp fuse in there, mini fuse, and it's been working for me great for about 5 years. As a matter of fact, that fuse was not my problem. It never blew out. But anyway, if you want to check that red wire for continuity, all you do is set your multimeter on continuity, and then you just touch one lead to the red wire in the connector, and then to the positive side of the battery you should hear a beep. That'll tell you have continuity there. And the other wire is, you have a blue wire. That blue wire goes over to the fuse panel, which is right inside the passenger door right here. And you'll see a fuse, and it should be a 3-amp fuse. It says fan right on it. It says CLG fan on that fuse. You can check continuity between that fuse and the blue wire on the relay to make sure that that isn't shorting out, or that it has good connection. The other wire, you have a dark green wire. The dark green wire from this relay goes straight over to the passenger side, and it goes over to the cooling fan switch. And that's easy to check continuity on. You can unplug the cooling fan switch connector, and there's way more than enough lead line on it. Should be on a multimeter to check continuity between the wire. Make sure that it hasn't gotten hot and melted through on the engine block or something, because that would cause you problems. And then the last wire is a red and a black wire. That red and black wire goes straight. It isn't more than maybe 48 inches long. It goes straight over to the cooling fan. We have a connector down there on the bottom of the cooling fan. It's just two wires. One, like I said, is the red and the black wire. That's the power wire that goes to the cooling fan motor. The cooling fan motor also has its own ground, which is right there. Right there. That's the only thing that grounds right there. That's ground number G133. That is what grounds the fan motor. So it's easy to check continuity between all of those wires. Just pull the connector out, which is really easy. You can check continuity between the ground wire and that G133 right there. Make sure you have continuity, something hasn't burned out. And it's easy to check continuity between the power lead, which is the black and the red wire, back up to the relay. So if you have good wiring and good continuity and everything, then you probably don't have a wiring melted through somewhere that's causing a short or something like that. But so you can you want to check your fuse in the fuse box and make sure that it hasn't blown out. If it's blown out, something's shorting out somewhere. But if you disconnect, if you take the connector, pull the connector, you can take the whole relay off. Really, it's a lot easier to work with it. You pull the connector out, and you can apply 12 volts to the motor, to the black and the red wire. You can apply 12 volts to it, and that should operate the fan motor. So then you would isolate the fact that, well, it's not the motor if the motor's running. Also, according to the factory service manual, you can turn the ignition switch to the run position. Just turn the key on. Don't start the car. Just turn it to the run position. And you can ground circuit 335, which is the dark green wire, the one that goes over to the cooling fan switch on the passenger side of the engine block between cylinders 7 and 8. Ground that circuit. Batteries all hooked up. The key is in the run position. Just take a jumper lead and ground it has to be connected up though. Okay, it has to be connected to the relay, so you would have to back probe the dark green wire. But you can back probe the dark green wire, ground it to anything, ground it to the battery. It's sitting right here, and the fan should come on. That eliminates, because what you're actually doing is you're doing the job of the cooling fan switch, which is when it heats up, it closes the circuit and it just grounds the system out. you're just simulating that by bypassing it and going straight to ground. But it also says to check circuit 902, which is, again, that's the red and the black wire that goes from the cooling fan motor over to the relay switch. And you can actually take the cap off the relay. You can take the relay off the wheel well, take the cap off, and you can actually push the contacts together with everything hooked up, and it should run. You should have power over to the cooling fan motor. But the wiring, checking the relay, you'd need a 12-volt power supply to check your relay, which I have inside. I made another video on that if you want to look at that and how to check the relay. But check all the fuses, check continuity between all the wires. Check the fuses. If you keep blowing a fuse, I kept blowing. I went through 4 3-amp fuses on the cooling fan, because I basically finally realized the connector on this old, almost 37-year-old car was, it must have got frayed, must have got loose, and it was shorting out the system, and it was blowing fuses. So I finally just took this all apart, rewired the whole thing, went and got some new connectors, which they're obsolete. So I don't know, unless you can find out where to get them, because one of them was pretty beat up, one of the connectors that on one of the wires. So unless you can find them, I found them at Napa. She had an old box of them in the back. If you can't do that, you can buy a new relay with a new connector and rewire everything like that. But yeah, this was kind of got away from me a little bit. I didn't really expect it to be a teeny tiny short inside the relay. I thought I had another wiring probably grounding out somewhere. Like I say, I'll put this video up, and if anybody has any problems with their cooling fan, if there's anything I can help somebody with, just send me an email or send me a comment, and I'll try to help you out. Because the cooling fan on this car it's very simple, but it's also can be kind of annoying. But basically just checking all the wiring, check all the wiring, check all the fuses. You've got a relay, a cooling fan switch, and if all that's working, you don't need to worry about anything else. You don't have to worry about the engine, the ECM, nothing. So let me know. I hope this helps somebody.